How's it going, everyone? My name is True Wonder Dog, and today we're having an in-depth look at Sub-Zero. This character is considered top 5 by many players, but oddly enough, some pros don't think he's that good. Now, for me personally, I think Sub-Zero is very solid. He has resets for days and is pretty much deadly from any distance. So without any further ado, let's have a look at this character, starting off with some of his best normals. So first up, we have his down 1. This thing is 6 frames, so very much like Garrus, it's faster than a vast majority of the cast. Honestly, I'm still not sure why some characters have faster down 1s, but as of right now, Sub-Zero is one of those characters. And then we have the Rising Axe. This move is pretty much best used as an anti-air, though it's also his fastest mid, fun fact. Now it's not quite as fast as this low, which is why after a down 1, you're going to do back 3 most of the time, but this is technically his fastest mid. And as mentioned earlier, it's also a fantastic anti-air. Now the damage you get normally isn't that much, but with one crushing blow, it's easily above 30%. And then we have the Brutal Kick. Quite easily one of the most irritating moves in my opinion, though I do love using it whenever I play Sub-Zero. So at first glance, it doesn't seem that scary, it's just a mid that knocks the opponent away. And it's a bit annoying how once I knock you down, I'm at the perfect distance to just keep doing it over and over again, but it still doesn't seem that bad as long as you get hit by it, though I do want to state how ridiculous the hitbox is on this thing. It hits the opponent even when they're very far above you. I'm not sure what they were thinking with this hitbox, but it's pretty darn good. However, this move is much scarier when it's blocked. If you block this move, I'm now at +4, which means I can squeeze out this, I can do this, and you can't even jab me out of this, you have to block it. And that's why this Brutal Kick can be quite frustrating to many players. You can't really escape it by jumping because the hitbox is so darn big on it, and if you do choose to block it, there's still now a mix-up. It's guaranteed pressure, but if you block too much, I can just throw you, so it's a very frustrating move to deal with at the moment. And that's about it for his normal attacks, so next up let's have a look at his attack strings. So I didn't even know this until today, but his best punish string is actually only neutral if you don't finish it, so that's pretty darn good. And you're gonna notice pretty much everything Sub-Zero does is safe with the exception of a couple of strings, so even though he has crazy mix-ups and godlike resets, he's still fairly safe on block a majority of the time. So even if you do stop his offense, you can't really punish him for doing it unless he just gets careless. Alright, so here we have every attack string from Sub-Zero. So first up, Cold Encounter. Now this move actually crushing blows after a combo of 8 hits or more, which makes it very deadly, especially in the corner, although there are ways to still get this crushing blow even from mid-screen, which is nice because normally Sub-Zero's combos don't do very much damage, so this crushing blow helps to alleviate that a little bit even if it's just once a match. Not to mention this string on hit also gives tons of space and lets you set up his running 4, so it's really good for that as well. Even on hit, it's a fantastic move. Even if you don't end combos with it, it's still relatively good. And this first hit, by the way, his standing jab, while it is 8 frames and technically 1 frame slower than some characters, look out the range on this thing. Look at the range, it's so darn good. The range on these 2 hits are just amazing. And then we have Frozen Over. Now the first 2 hits are godlike. Look at that first hit, start of the round. Start of the round, I can reach the opponent. If it lands, I can do an ice ball and get my combo started. And then to end combos, I finish it and do his slide or his shoulder. Either one, really darn good. Now the third hit actually is -7 and therefore punishable against some characters. They can't actually reach you and get a full combo. So you do want to hit confirm this string, but unless you overcommit, he's still relatively safe. So it's a great combo starter with fantastic range and good hit stun. And that's not it. What makes this move really scary is the reset potential. So if I freeze you and then do this, I'm at such plus frames that I can go for my low or my overhead and you have to block it. You can't do a thing. And that's pretty absurd because the overhead is actually pretty slow and yet you still can't press a button. If you do, I'll get the counter hit. And you don't want that because the full string actually crushing blows. So if I land this and then just go for my mix up, you're forced to respect it. And I can get a 50-50 combo here. My overhead combos with 1 bar and without the bar, my low combos. And this is why Sub-Zero can be quite frustrating to many players. He freezes you, he does this string, and now you're forced to block what I do next. I'll do it again. This time I'm going for the overhead. You had to block that. And even though I'm not getting very much damage off of these resets, just keep in mind how scary this must be if you're already close to being dead. And next up we have New Threat. There's not too much to be said about this string except for the first hit actually recovers quicker than his standing 1, so for corner combos you actually want to do 2, because you can do it faster back to back than his 1, so you do 2, 2, 1, 2, 4 and get your crushing blow. And then we have Unchained. Now, normally I don't finish this string because, as an anti-air, you get your combo started with the ice ball. However, sometimes the opponent isn't expecting that second hit because the first hit, while it's safe, is still minus, so they expect you to stop your offense and they're going to try and take their turn back, and you just go, nope. And it catches a lot of players off guard, they're just not expecting that second hit. So sometimes I just let it rip and see if it catches them. Just be warned, that's a risky move because the second hit is actually unsafe on block. And then we have Final Draw. My god, this move, just the first hit. This overhead is somewhat reactable offline, but online it's pretty ridiculous. You kind of just have to expect it. If Sub-Zero's too far for this to reach, then just expect the overhead because that's what he's going for. If he's right in your face, you just have to guess, but a lot of the time they're going for the light attack, or at least I am because the whole string is safe. The overhead is much riskier, and if they don't have a bar, chances are they're not going to go for it either. So look at their meter and see if they have any bar to burn. If not, it's most likely going to be a low because that combo is meterless, but it's still pretty darn ridiculous. You just don't want to press any buttons to try to beat it a lot of the time, because if you do mistime it, they will counter hit you and get that crushing blow, which does pretty absurd damage. And since the range on this move is so good, it can also be a good whiff punish, and that leads to a crushing blow as well. So even though this string is unsafe, I think it more than makes up for it with that crushing blow damage. And it's also worth mentioning that first hit is completely safe. If they don't overcommit, you can't even punish them for it. And next up we have Below Freezing. There's not too many uses for this move since it starts off high, however on block it is +1, so that's nice. Or at least it would be if you didn't have so many other ways to force frame advantage on block and on hit. So this move isn't that useful, though it does still have one nice thing about it. So if you ever just want to throw it out, maybe the opponent isn't used to seeing it and doesn't know that it's +1, so that might work, especially at casual level. And then last but certainly not least, we have Frosty. As mentioned earlier, the first two hits are your go-to combo starter, doesn't even cost any meter. And the range on this thing is pretty sick as well, and it's also your fastest string that actually combos. So this might be faster, and this as well, but as far as combo starters go, this is your fastest go-to hit confirm. And best of all, it's actually safe as well, so if you're not very good at hit confirming and just don't want to overcommit because the ice ball is unsafe if blocked, you can just do the whole thing, and it's only -5. And look at all that pushback. On hit, set this up, get those plus frames. It's just nuts. This string is really good. Go-to combo starter, safe on block, and on hit, perfect for setting up his running forward 4. Really good. And that's about it for Sub-Zero strings. As you can see, he's a very solid character. The only thing he might be lacking in is his crushing blows, but thankfully his special moves have some as well, so I say he's fairly balanced in that regard, nothing too crazy. He's not Garrus, but he's also not Frost. He has some useful crushing blows to be sure. So next up, let's have a look at his special moves. So first up, we have the Ice Ball. This thing staggers the opponent for a very long time. There's nothing in the game quite like it. Even all the way from down here, I have time to dash in and get my combo started. It holds them in place for so darn long. It's also your go-to combo extender. However, do be warned, every hit that comes after is going to be reduced a lot, which is why Sub-Zero's combos don't do very much damage, especially when it involves his Ice Ball. But in some more casual builds, he has special moves that extend combos without freezing the opponent, and those combos actually do around average damage. But when it comes to his Ice Ball combos, he'll always be doing a little less damage than a majority of the cast, and I think that's fair since the Ice Ball is just so darn good. Not to mention, in this first tournament build, you can amplify it, which does a lot of cool stuff. For starters, it's much faster now on startup, which means it combos after his overhead. By default, he can't actually do that, which means no 50-50s. But in this first build, he certainly can, and then keep that combo going. And this gives him those crazy 50-50s after hits, or even on block when he sets up stuff like this. He can still pressure you with this button, so he's really good when he has that amplified Ice Ball. And not only is it faster, but the amplified Ice Ball will actually eat other projectiles completely. So not only will you freeze the opponent, but you also avoid getting hit by their projectile in return, which of course gives you more time to close that gap and get the combo started. So in summary, the enhanced Ice Ball is just insane. Its only drawback is that it's still minus on block, just like the regular version. However, fun fact, it is 1 frame less safe, so I believe it's -16 by default, but when you amplify it, it's only -15. Now, it's still a full combo punish no matter what, especially if you're up close, but just a fun fact, it is slightly less punishable. And then next up we have Cold Shoulder. Pretty good range on this thing. If you amplify it, you get a bit more damage, and then on counter hit or as a whiff punish, you get a crushing blow. And most of the time you don't want to whiff punish with this thing. However, it's only 17 frames on startup, which seems really slow. but believe it or not, there are many characters who are that minus on a string, but they have tons of pushback on block, meaning none of your normals can actually reach them. However, Sub-Zero is one of those few characters who can punish it regardless. So for example, Noob Saibot is one such character. He has a string that is very minus on block, but it puts you so far away that no normal attack can punish him. However, the Cold Shoulder can, and if you amplify it, you get the Crushing Blow. And keep in mind, you can actually buffer a special move while blocking, and the game will actually give it to you as soon as possible, which means special moves are actually much easier to punish with. So if you're serious about maining Sub-Zero, you want to look at the enemy's frame data and see how many moves they have that are minus 17, because not only will this move punish, but you'll also get the Crushing Blow. And that's actually it for his special moves in this variation. He only has two special moves. However, much like Guile in Street Fighter, they're the only two special moves he needs because they're so darn good. But next up, let's have a look at his second variation. So first up, we have the slide. This move starts up in 11 frames, which, if you ask me, is a bit too fast, and the range on this thing is absolutely absurd. If Sub-Zero is ever beyond his overhead distance, like he's further than this, you just want to block low a lot, like very frequently, because if not, this slide will just catch you at random, and it's very tough to react to online, and if he amplifies it, he gets even more damage, and then if he amplifies it 3 times, which will happen every single match, just because it's his go-to combo ender, when he gets that third one, he gets a Crushing Blow for even more damage. So even though Sub-Zero does lose access to his 50/50s in this build, he actually gets more combo damage overall. Not to mention, this move starts up so quick that just like his shoulder, it can punish pretty much anything on block. A lot of characters do have things that are minus 11, but once again, they're pushed so far away on block, they assume you can't punish them. But with this slide, you actually can, and you can also input it early because once again, it'll come out on frame 1 after you're done blocking. So not only is this move great for ending combos and has a Crushing Blow, but it's also a really good punish as long as you know the frame data. And next up, we have the Polar Axe. A pretty good projectile, has a really good angle on it, and it's mid, so you're forced to block it. It also gives Sub-Zero more hang time, so against characters who have projectiles, he can actually avoid them with this, and he does not have the amplified ice ball, so this can be a pretty good way to counter zoning and beat you with his own projectiles. However, it's also good for escaping a rushdown character. You jump backwards, and if they try to advance on you, catch them with this. And then we have Frigid Storm. Now it's very slow on startup, however it hits mid, which means the opponent can't actually duck under it like they can many other projectiles. And it's also full screen, meaning the opponent has to respect this thing from pretty much any distance. So even though it is a bit slower on startup, it does have that really big hitbox that can actually catch players trying to jump as well. So this move definitely still serves a purpose. And last but not least, we have Death Sickle Barrage. So this string is also a mid. All of them are mid, and they also do damage over time as well. So look at that, Devora is still taking damage as they break. So it actually does deceptively more damage than you think. It's very punishable on block, however, look how far I step back before doing it. Here's an example of what I was talking about earlier, a move that is very minus but also puts some good space between you and the opponent, so you might think the enemy can't punish it. However, if they're playing Sub-Zero, they can just slide on block and punish you for it every single time, since it starts up in 11 frames and has such fantastic range. And that's about it for his second variation. Now I think this build is more matchup specific. It's not your go-to build most of the time, however that slide is so good for punishing characters who do moves that are normally safe, but not against this move since the range is so insane and it starts up so quickly. Not to mention it also goes under projectiles. I kinda forgot to mention that. This can duck a lot of projectiles that hit high, which makes it even more deadly when you're within range of it. And as mentioned earlier, his Polar Axe can also be good for countering zoning or even escaping a rushdown character. So if you want to play a bit more defensively, this can also be a very good tool, and he also has Frigid Storm to stop the opponent from jumping, or at the very least force them to block, and then he has Death Sickle Barrage, which still has its purposes. It does damage over time, scoots him back a little bit to keep him more safe. However, out of all of his moves, I think this is definitely the riskiest. And that about covers Sub-Zero. Please let me know your thoughts on this character in the comments down below. Do you think he's a bit too strong, or is he fine where he is? And if you'd like to see him nerfed, how would you go about doing it? Please tell me down in the comments. And while you're down there, go ahead and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Really does help my channel out a ton. And finally, why not keep that combo going by subscribing and ringing that bell? That way you never miss a future video. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.